All right, let's see if this thing is working. All right, so this is a quick run through of a lot of the different things that I do for figuring out what the hell type of screen that I'm on. All right, so in the comments there will be a link to the original blog post that was done by ICS, Jeff Tranter specifically, that talks about niceties in Qt5 and getting screen information. This is really useful if you are doing a mobile application and for some reason you wind up, well, not wind up, you will. If you do anything with Android, you know there's 1,000,001 screen sizes. Not so much the same issue on iOS, but nevertheless, if you wind up doing it for both, then you run into the problem of how to best present your UI. And God forbid you have desktops included in that, which are an entire different class of monitors that can span all sorts of different things. So it's great to have as much information, from my point of view at least, about the screens that you're working with. And so basically that blog post kind of showed a nice way to do it, and that's what we are showing here, which is basically using QScreen and sort of iterating through all of the screen information and then storing that later. So this is actually just a simple constructor for this thing. It's not much in the source. I actually wound up putting most of it in the header. So zooming back out, we have a couple different classes that I created. Some were just basically enum related, but like one, for example, screen data, it just has some hard-coded values for where I basically delineated certain things. So basically like how we rate pixel density as something to keep in mind, and so it's basically broken out into different categories. Same with device sizes, although device size isn't necessarily, that's more resolution. And then you have actual sizes of devices, like, basically these correlate to inches, so 4 inches and less, that's going to be a small phone, versus next step up, which is 7-inch tablet. Then you have 10-inch tablets and everything in between, and 13-inch, which we assume is computer monitors, though there are ways around that. But the idea basically there is to break out the UI into different size items. So that way we have, we can easily delineate between a small device versus being on a medium versus large, or even extra large, which makes a big difference when we're trying to just present UIs and things like that down the road. So that's all in the screen data class, which is basically just a bunch of enums to help us along with some values. Then we have the actual screen object class, which is our representation of the screen. This is done just because there were some other things that I wanted to move around and adjust, and so instead of just pulling directly from QScreen, I created an intermediate class that could have things that I wanted. Long story short, basically it has some properties and things like that, because this gets injected into QML. And this class basically just contains a lot of the properties that, as you can see, basically screen object is create one, and then we basically fill it up with all this information that we extract from the actual screens from via QScreen. And then as part of the constructor, what it does is it actually takes care of, in this little block here, basically giving us all of the other additional information like diagonal size, setting what sort of class it is, medium, large, etc., so on and so forth, DPI settings, and all of that. So everything, by the time this is done, we have a quick reference to all of the properties that this screen will typically fall into. So if it's like an Android small screen but high DPI, we'll have a very quick way to always access that in both QML and then at the C++ level. So that's a little bit more of the guts. Also, I guess these aren't really needed now because you can get enums to string in Qt5, but when I started, that wasn't a thing. So basically that's what these do, take the enums and return them to an actual string. So moving on up, then we have the screen info class. The screen info class basically has two things, and one of which isn't really needed, but basically its whole purpose is to serve as an accessor for all the different screens and stuff like that, and just tell you quickly what the actual current screen that's being used. So all of that is basically used so that we can inject it into Q file selector or QML file selector. So let me see if we can actually locate. This is it. Oh, yeah, it's right in front of me. Derp. Almost derp. No, that is not it. Why is my syntax highlighting all screwy? All right. So this line here, what happens is basically we take the screen information that we already have, and then we use it to create our set of Q file selectors. So what that allows us to do is, oh man, go back. What that gives us is a set of selectors, and that may be hard to see, but basically a set of selectors that we can now use for theming our application. So now, when I come across a screen that has a physical size of super large but low DPI, it's trivial for me to add some kind of style object that correlates to that particular configuration. And the same goes with small devices with high DPI. Like this is an Android example. Now this is an Android Nexus 7 from, excuse me, the original Nexus 7. So it's, in this case, medium with low DPI, as you can see, and then has all the other relative things, including Android, as a particular choice. So in this case, it's really straightforward once you get that one class put together to then, for the rest of the application, sort of have a simple way of theming it combining it with Q file selector. And you know, it really depends on how you want to organize your QML, but for the most part, it makes it easy to start with the Q file selector bit and then move on. And that is it.